Here's a truly incredible video on a future with no prostate biopsies, as well as a if you don't see it, don't treat it approach. This video is invaluable, so save it and stay strong.
The impact of hormone on individuals, particularly older men.
Yeah.
Loss of energy, loss of bone mass,
Yeah.
cognition. I can't do the crossword quite as well as I could. Change in body habitus, loss of libido, and it just goes on
Yeah.
and on. So yes, I'm all about lesions. So I do an MRI to find a lesion, and I will monitor that lesion or treat that lesion. And increasingly, I think, and this is the most controversial thing I'll say today, is that clinically significant disease is cancer that you can see. If you can't see it, it doesn't exist. And I'll pause there a second, just like every other cancer. All right, so remember, the cancer stories start when you can see it. So if somebody has a headache, they send you off for an MRI. If the MRI is clear, you're reassured. You're treated. If there's a abnormality in the brain that looks like a cancer, it's biopsied. So it starts with a visible disease: lung, breast, kidney, liver. Cancer is cancer when you can see it. If there's no visible lesion, nobody sticks a needle into you. And I don't see why the prostate should be any different, because all the cancers I've talked about have much worse outcomes than prostate. So you'd have to really argue with me to tell me that I need to find all this invisible disease. And this goes back to your previous podcast that Gleason 3+3 isn't cancer. Well, nothing is cancer unless you can see it. And, I would argue that Gleason 4+3, non-visible, is not cancer, because I wouldn't find it. I wouldn't detect it. And it's only detected serendipitously if you insist on random biopsy. So you'll miss it more often than you'll hit it. And if you can't reliably identify something in science, you can't study it. And so you have to have, this goes back to Lord Kelvin as a kind of really important principle. A non-visible disease you can't monitor, you can't re-evaluate because you don't know where it is, you don't know where to stick your needle. And that's been the problem with active surveillance historically, is that we've never known whether progression was progression or just reclassification. Your needles just went into a different place and found a bit of different disease.
Yeah, exactly.
So this, for me, this is the big story of the next 10 years, is our notion of prostate cancer is going to go from a histological phenotype. Phenotype's a funny word, but it's just the kind of way it looks, really. Or the way we see it.
Yeah, sure.
So in other words, we have a conceptual notion of cancer down a microscope, and increasingly our notion of cancer is going to be one that is elicited through imaging. And I'm not an MRI. I don't make any money from MRI. I don't own, not knowingly anyway, own shares in Siemens. And I'm agnostic whether that is elicited by MRI or PSMA PET or ultrasound or whatever we have in the future. But it's visible disease. Why? Because visible disease represents at least 100 million cells. So in other words, a 0.2 cc lesion is a lot of 100 million cancer cells as a minimum. And we now know that visible disease is much more likely to be high grade and is much more likely to have key genetic mutations that are associated with progression and subsequent death. I can say more about this, but I'll stop there.
Imagine a future where a prostate biopsy to determine if a man has prostate cancer is no longer needed. I cannot imagine that, but today's conversation with Dr. Mark Emberton might have changed my mind that there is such a future possible, based on a German study where they looked at PSMA and MRI without biopsy, and they were pretty much 100% sure that if those two images came out positive for prostate cancer, upon treatment for prostate cancer, they all had cancer in their prostate. Is that possible here in the U.S.? Is that going to be something that's going to be standard of care in the future? That's part of my conversation with Mark Emberton, a interventional oncologist, urologist within the Division of Surgery, and Dean of the Faculty of Medical Sciences at the University of College of London.